Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show, designers discussing design. We're on episode 78, supply and demand. That's right, we're going to actually give it a little bit of a twist tonight, and we're not going to necessarily talk about design. We're going to be talking about distribution. Talk about the industry and how games get from point A to point B, the logistics, the buyers, the orders, the warehousing, all that nitty-gritty stuff that gets your games that you create into the hands of the customer. And as I speak, you'll notice we have dropping in with us Stephanie Straw, who has
she looks very dark today.
she looks very dark. Is very mysterious. So before we go to Stephanie, let's go to Sen. How you doing, Sen?
I'm doing fine. So we have today with us a bunch of cool guests talking about distro from the inside out. So it's going to be really neat to learn what actually goes on in the industry from that side of things. We talk a lot about design. We talk a lot about pitching. We talk a lot about that. But the nuts and bolts of the distribution system is really, it's kind of the pumping of the lifeblood of games across, the nation. And so it's actually a really important thing for designers to understand to a certain degree, so that they know, what they're talking about. Especially in today's age of Kickstarter, where you can become a self-publisher really easily, knowing how to get your game into that stream of flow of stuff is awesome. Hey, look, it's Stephanie Straw.
Also known as the beardless Meeple.
Yeah, we're calling you the beardless Meeple.
I mean, that's true for now, but you never know.
That's
You
what
never
Sen
know.
said. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I have beard envy sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, imagine Steph with a beard. Like, she could dye it multiple colors,
Whoa.
and it'd be super cool. See,
That-
We don't
that'd
have
be
to
a lot of
imagine
hair.
it.
Yeah,
that's
you
what
can
that's
just
what I'm saying.
create
Like,
it.
look,
This is it right here.
That
That's
looks
what it
like
would
one of
look
those
like.
scarf beards.
That looks pretty rad, actually, right?
yeah.
Isn't that desirable?
I don't know. For some reason, I feel like that would look really good in Essen, right?
Right?
That beard.
well, I mean,
Right?
you could totally be like a
Hang out with the
a
dwarves.
Yeah,
One with the
Yeah.
dwarf.
for sure.
So, before we go any farther, for anyone who doesn't know, Stephanie is one of the amazing hosts of Nerd Nighters. And so you should check that out. And over the summer, stay tuned for a few Nerd Syrup episodes that'll pop up as well.
Which is like a
yeah,
mashup of
we'll do
Nerd
stuff.
Nighters plus Meeple Syrup, which I love doing with Daryl. It is
Yeah.
like one of my favorite things, and we've already talked about. We have some plans.
Are they cunning plans? Are they so cunning
Yeah.
you could
Plus
So
5
tell on
cunning.
it and call it a weasel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
before we go any further, what was Nerd Nighters all about this evening, so people who haven't seen it can check it out on YouTube?
We had a bevy of people on the show. So Nerd Nighters tonight. We actually are switching to where you can watch us on Twitch. So twitch.tv/DFW Nerd Night. You can watch on YouTube or that, but that's where all the chat is happening. That just works better for a live format for the show. So for us, and we like do some live play games and stuff like that. So follow us there, and you can watch us before the Meeple Syrup show at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Because we did not want to conflict with Meeple Syrup. We like whenever we can do one and then the other, and then everybody can join both shows because you guys are awesome. Tonight we had Team Geek on. So we had, oh my gosh, we had Scott Alden, Chad Krazan, the business manager for Board Game
Chatty.
Geek, Lincoln Demers, the producer. So he does their media and like game night and stuff like that.
Nice.
Daniel Karp, senior software engineer, so he's responsible for a lot of the new user interface for Board
The
Game
new
Geek.
snazzy look.
He's the one we never get to see. We never get to meet him.
Yeah, I know, but you got to see him tonight if you
I
watch
know.
it, or go back and watch the
He's
archive
like the
show
rare
after this.
Pokemon that you got to catch them all. He's the one to catch.
Pokeroo. I like to think of him as Pokeroo.
Yeah, but you know what? Not a lot of people understand Pokeroo, Daryl.
Really?
Ask Stephanie if she knows what Pokeroo is.
What?
See,
Am I old?
No, you're Canadian.
Oh, is that a
Yeah.
Canadian thing?
Yeah, like totally.
I don't know.
Oh.
We also had Jeff Anderson, director of events.
He's just keeping on
he's-
going.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Well,
go on.
there's just so many guests. It's crazy.
So he's responsible for Board Game Geek Con, and
You know what
then
would've been
Matthew
quicker?
Monin.
You should have
What?
just named who wasn't on the show.
Yeah, I mean, well, so Matthew Monin, community manager, and then W. Eric Martin hopped in at the end of
Boom.
the show,
Yeah.
and he
Mic
has
drop.
a beard. Did you know that? He has a
Yeah,
beard
he can
now.
actually grow a beard. It's a scary thing.
It's
See,
so
talking
weird.
about
Yeah, I saw
beards.
pictures of him in New York recently with his kiddo and
Yeah.
His beardo, his kiddo
I-
and his beardo.
his kiddo and his beardo.
Nice.
I love bearded W. Eric Martin though.
So who wasn't on the show? Let me think.
That's Team Geek? That sounds like a lot of them.
No, there's like one
Um,
person missing.
No,
There's a
who
couple.
does their marketing and the banners and stuff?
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember, but yes, there's a couple
That
people
person.
missing.
Yeah,
Coppers.
there's a couple people, and like Beth wasn't there.
How dare they?
Yeah,
Well, we'll see a bunch of them next week anyway, so that's good.
yeah.
Cool. So let's get on with the show in a way, like not
On
the
with the
guest part,
show.
but Daryl.
Get the hook. Get me off already.
No.
No, you're here for asking questions.
Yeah. So Daryl, what's been going on design-wise for you?
Yeah,
what's
actually,
what's the biggest design challenge that you've had this week? That's a good question.
biggest design challenge this week. Actually, I've had a few fun challenges, but one that was a really fun one that I just decided to do today was, as people know, I got to do the dice game for Back to the Future, and the biggest fan of Back to the Future that I know is Chris Leader.
Yes, he is quite a big fan.
And so actually, we set up a Skype and we decided to make our own little Back to the Future game. No idea if it'll ever be able. We'll pitch it to IDW, but we thought, you know what? Forget this. We're just going to make our own. We made sure it was completely different than Ben and Matt's, so that was a rule. And we gave ourselves a few different other restrictions, but it was super fun, and we brainstormed an idea for a game. So that was today. And yeah, that was just decided to say I would love to work with Chris, and let's see if we could design something. And if we need to, we'll have to redesign the IP.
Sure. It could be a time travel game of some kind.
Exactly.
Interesting.
How about yourself, Sen? I'll throw it back at you just before.
Yeah.
Ooh, right
Toss
back
it
at you. So we're working on we're working on a bunch of stuff, obviously, but as always,
The
but we're working
Bamboozle
on
brothers are always working on stuff.
yeah, and then the little offshoot, Bamboozle cousins and stuff like that. So
I want to be a cousin. Am I related? Do I have to marry someone?
no,
No, you're just related.
you're just related.
Yeah.
You're just related.
I think
Can't
you just
you tell? I mean, look at the I
Yeah.
Your
don't have
hair.
a beard. You don't
guys
have
have
a
the
beard.
same hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There.
So we're related. No, so we've been working on a bunch of stuff for IDW lately, Jay and I, and then Jesse and I have been working on a bunch of stuff for IDW as well, in terms of just getting some stuff ready. Scott and I have been in talks with Renegade for Burning Rubber and with Stronghold. So just getting ready to show some stuff at the gathering, cleaning up some stuff that needed major cleanup. It's really funny. One of the best things about game designing, and it doesn't seem like the best thing at the time, is getting rejected. And then you get that rejection, and you take the game back, and you swear and you curse the name of Chris Kirkman. I mean, the publisher who just rejected your game, and then you realize that wow, they were right. And now the problem becomes, or the fun part actually, it's a fun problem, is seeing how can you work within the constraints that they just provided you, knowing that they might not publish your game, but a guy who has a lot of success in the industry has published a bunch of games, said X about the game. How do we meet that X? And so that's been really cool. And then you wonder, why didn't we do that in the first place? Because it made so much sense.
Absolutely.
But because it's such an
It's a good
iterative
feeling
process.
afterwards, though.
Yeah.
It's so good afterwards where you're like, whoa, obviously this game had to change.
Yeah.
But at the time, you thought it was in a better place. So.
Yeah, or it was just in a place where we might have not seen what Chris was seeing, or we maybe needed confirmation that that was the issue before we invested the time it took to change it. And honestly, it didn't take a lot of time to change it, but it was more
Which direction?
Yeah, which direction, and that getting your game out there, guys. If you have a game idea in your head, A, put it on the table, B, put it in front of people who you don't always game with and whose
Yes.
opinions opinions you respect, because then you're going to make some changes, and then you're going to see where your product falls down, where it comes in limping, and then you can support it somehow. Hey, Steph, what's happening in Arkansas?
Just playing some games, Just
Yeah?
living
Playing
the
some
dream.
games, yo. What's
Yeah.
happening on like a typical Saturday
A
at
Saturday,
at the local game store?
Saturday's a full day, so we have been doing a lot of game swaps. So at the end of January, kind of just after Christmas, we did a board game swap at the friendly local game store. So you could bring in your board games, set your own prices for them, and sell them, and then you'll get that amount in store credit from the store.
Awesome.
And then, of course, people could just buy, cheap games, used, unused, some of them still in shrink. Things that people got for Christmas, maybe they already had a copy, maybe it just wasn't their game, they didn't want to play
Crazy.
it.
Games don't shrink.
I think that's a
good
idea. Hey, Steph, what is your FLGS?
My friendly local game store is Game Goblins in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Game Goblins.
I love them a ton. They're having their 4th birthday.
So
April 20th, 2012 is whenever they
send them a singing thing on Facebook.
I'll do
And
something.
actually, speaking of Chris Leader, so we secured Giant Suro for the event.
Don't lose Giant Suro. Don't lose it.
Yeah, Giant Suro. No, there are 2. They only have 2 copies of it, so if we lost it, that would be terrible.
That's exactly right. I've just had random tweets from like Cass or somebody saying, "Where's your Giant
actually,
Suro?"
breaking news on that topic.
Oh yeah.
Breaking news right now on this live show.
Breaking news at 11:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But Cassidy is making a little bit of a shift to another Seattle-based company, Cheap Ass Games.
Yeah, congratulations to
Congratulations to her, and has always been a great supporter of our show, so we wish her best of luck. And she left Calliope on great terms still, and the person who is shifting into that role is Chris Leader.
Oh, nice. Good. Perfect. So it's good all around.
It's all around wonderful.
Yeah, so James gets Cassidy, and Chris gets to
put more
move
time
up.
into Calliope.
That's awesome. So. Excellent. And Daryl, what's your friendly local game store? I love people talking about their FLGSs.
Absolutely. I just took a photo there yesterday.
Yeah.
And
to prove that you were there.
To prove that I was there.
And to prove that our friend's game was there.
I always take pictures of friends' games, and it's funny because sometimes I take pictures and people are like, "Why did you take this random picture of a shelf?" And I'm like, "Because look at all these fun games." But J&J,
like Sapiens.
J&J Cards and Collectibles is my go-to. A local game store, although there's a lot of wonderful game stores, especially online stores in our area.
Yeah.
But J&J's has incredible prices and wonderful inventory and great customer service. So unfortunately, they do not have gaming space, but we are fortunate to have some game cafes. So they work hand in hand with the local game cafes and encourage people to check out games there. They offer good prices to the cafes on games, and the cafes don't sell games. They encourage them to go to local game stores.
Yeah.
So it's a nice relationship locally.
Could almost be called symbiotic.
Symbiotic. So, and so I happened to spot an IDW's Godfather 1, the prequel to.
I saw that photo.
Yeah, and then also there was Food Fighters, which is made and designed and developed by Helena and Josh Capel and that's a wonderful family game. So anyone who's looking for a game that you can play as adults or kids and adults, check out Food Fighters.
Yes, and my family local game store is LA Mood. So if you're in the London area and you want to play games with Tyler and myself, let us know. We'll probably be somewhere around LA Mood or the Cardboard Cafe. Other than that,
you might get to play with Tyler. We actually have no idea where Tyler is.
We don't know where he is. He might actually be.
That is why.
It's actually kind of scary. It actually is.
It's not. It's not at all. Tyler would probably be asleep or something.
Just sleeping. Everyone.
He's
either sleeping or on a bender. No, I mean just sleeping.
Just sleeping.
The beard has tryptophan in it.
It probably does.
The beard needs a rest. The beard needs a rest.
So, speaking about friendly local game stores, I think it's time that we bring in our
Yeah.
guest, Bobby Stickle,
Someone
who,
that makes the friendly local game
yes,
stores work.
yeah, this is how it happens, guys. You're gonna see it. So we're
This is
bringing
the
in
step before the step.
Bobby Stickle from GTS. Unfortunately, we don't have Mike here at the moment. If he shows up, awesome.
Yeah, I left him the link, and hopefully he'll jump in when he
Yeah.
sees it.
Bobby is all we need, though.
Bobby is
Mike
all we
drops in.
need for
That's
now.
great.
Yeah,
But
no
Bobby
problem.
can totally handle it.
All right. So welcome, Bobby, to the show. How are you, sir?
I am better than nothing. How are you?
You are for sure better than nothing. You're Bobby. Uh, let's start off the questioning. Miss Straw, do you have a question for Mr. Stickle?
Well, I'd actually like to give a shout out, to Bobby. So my friendly local game store, Game Goblins, had like kind of like a open house, like grand reopening. They moved to a new location, and GTS distribution was so helpful in making that a successful event. They helped send us some things that we could give away. They gave us some tips on the event, helped us out with social media. So GTS distribution went above and beyond for Game
That
Goblins.
sounds like some good customer service right there.
Yeah, it was. And Andrew Phillips is our rep from GTS, and he is totally plugged in and totally amazing and really, really, really great communicator. So that's my little shout out.
Shout out to Andrew.
Yeah. So I have a question on that, Bobby.
Okay.
How many? Because I haven't asked Andrew this. How many like reps do you have? Because Andrew seems so plugged in. I feel like we are his only customer, but I know that's not true.
How many sales reps do we employ?
Yeah.
At last count, I think we're in the area of around 30.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, so some of those are dedicated just to our sports card business. So if you're just talking about how many of those reps are purely for gaming stores, I think we're in the neighborhood of the mid-20s. So let's say 25. So yeah.
Love it, love it. I gotta say, as a fan of both sports and games, love the GTS combo. Well, I want to jump in actually to kind of the big news is coming up. April 1st coming around the corner, and GTS being one of the 5 companies that's on the Asmodee North America Club.
Yeah.
How did you get that prestigious membership?
And what does it even mean?
What does it mean? Can you give us in layman terms like how the world is going to change tomorrow?
Yeah, I can. So I can tell you first of all that we, as GTS, we saw this coming a couple of years ago. Some of the changes to the industry. And we spent some time preparing for it because, when it all goes down, we want to be in a good position. We want to benefit from this change, not have to scramble or anything else from that. So the good news is we are absolutely sitting in the driver's seat as far as U.S. distributors to be able to benefit from this. So what happened, for those of you keeping score at home, Asmodee and Fantasy Flight merged, and they became Asmodee North America, and then they added to that umbrella Days of Wonder and Queen, and now it's the Catan license.
Yes.
Not all of Mayfair. It's Catan.
All of Catan.
Right. So now you have Asmodee North America, and now what they're doing is they have a new policy going into place tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? It's in 40 minutes, actually. This new policy goes into place. And it affects all the tiers of the industry. So it's going to affect the distributors, it's going to affect the retailers, and to some extent it's going to affect the consumers, and I'm sure everybody's going to want to ask about how that works as well.
Sure.
How does that work as well?
So I'll get to that. So what happens is they're basically changing their terms on how people can buy and sell their product. Okay, so where do I begin on this? All right, so if you are a brick and mortar retailer, well, the first thing you have to do is you have to declare through a written agreement with Asmodee North America whether you are a brick and mortar retailer or you are an online retailer. And if you say I'm brick and mortar, you can't sell online at all. You can't have an Amazon account, an eBay store. You can't have a shopping cart on your website. No online sales whatsoever. So
For all products or just for Asmodee products?
just for our Asmodee North America products. Now,
Okay.
granted, in your typical game store, all those companies I mentioned, that's making up at least 60% of all the copies on the shelf.
Right.
So that's a big chunk of product, right? So, all right, so you are a brick and mortar store, right? And you agree to not sell online in any way, okay? So that's route number one. Route number two is if you say, you know what, I'm an online business. Okay, so that means a couple things. Obviously, you don't have a brick and mortar presence. It also means that you have to buy from one distributor, and it means that the good news for the online guys is that remember how I said the brick and mortar guys can't sell through any Amazon or third party or eBay stuff like that? That's been eliminated, so that was the biggest nagging competition for the online guys, which was causing them to have to drop their price down, which was putting the hurt on brick and mortar. So in theory, what's going to happen is, at the end of the day, that box, that game, its value is going to be preserved. You're not going to take a game that everybody worked hard to design and market and sell and all that, and all the costs that come out of that, like shipping and everything else that eat away at the profit of that game, and you're not going to devalue it. So if your Dracula's $60, I think, you're not going to have it sitting in the store of your friendly local game store for $60, yet everybody else can get it online for $30.
Yeah.
And now our brick and mortar guy is screwed.
Wow,
Right.
great explanation.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not price fixing, but it's dividing up the market share equitably.
It is. Yeah. And
That's the hope.
It really comes back to preserving the value of the product, because at the end of the day, if you can do that, then everybody involved makes more money, right?
Right.
Now you've got a healthier, stronger industry, which can trickle down to that publisher that's just one guy, or one woman in her apartment.
Right, which is definitely something we want to talk about, because a lot of our audience is that one person, one man show, one woman show. Hey, look, Peach State's here! Yay, PhD's in the house.
Hi. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
We're just happy you're here.
Where you're located down in Florida?
Yeah, so our HQ is in Florida, in Central Florida, and we do have warehouses all across the U.S. But,
Okay.
I am down in our Orlando office.
Okay, so your first question is, how is Peach State better than GTS? No, just kidding. That's not the question.
Yeah, battle IRL 1v1.
I'm very pretty. That's what it is. I bring a lot of pretty to the show. That's what it is.
So, in terms of, what are your thoughts? We're talking about Asmodee, as you might have gathered.
I gathered that.
So,
it seems to be the hot topic for everybody right now. So.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on the situation, and how is PhD involved in that at all, or what are you guys what are you doing as a company to position yourself?
So we're one of the five, as is what a lot of people are referring to it now, like ICV2 and a bunch of other new publications are calling the people who were chosen the Big Five, because it's the same five that were chosen for F to Z for Z-Man and all that. So yes, we are involved with it, and as to what we're doing about it, we're just kind of stocking up and helping people through the process and making sure everybody is signed up before Friday. That's when the thing happens. April 1st is when the contract goes in effect, and you have to make sure all these retailers are signed up and they're ready to go, and there's no interruption in the product going to their stores, because, like I said, come Friday, it's a clean cut. If you don't have an Asmodee North America specialty retailer number, we can't sell the product to you. And it's an easy process. You just go to their website, you sign up if you're a retailer, and their turnaround's very, very quickly. So that's really what our change is at this point. Other than that, it's business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just making sure retailers are signed up. They know how to sign up, what's going to change, if anything's going to change for them, which in most of them it isn't. Just the guys that are doing that hybrid stuff that aren't chosen for the online, we have to make sure they're aware that they can't sell the stuff online. They can only sell it in their actual brick and mortar store. So, yeah, just making sure the information stream is clear and conscious to the retailers.
Right.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I'm gonna jump to Bobby now. Next question. I'm kind of curious. As a designer, I do not understand or know anything about the whole like buyer distribution kind of thing that's going on. I just know that magically my games somehow get into stores, and so I'm curious. How does GTS determine what games to stock? How much of it? All that kind of decision-making process. Is there like some magical formula, or is it all from the gut? Could you tell our viewers a little bit of like how that process goes down?
Sure. So how you're asking about the process of how you
especially the buyers for distribution.
So a couple different ways. This happens a lot at trade shows, especially Gen Con or Essen or whatever. You've got a person that's, hey, I've got a game, I want to talk to somebody. And it doesn't have to happen at trade shows. It can happen through email. Somebody calls us on the phone. But somebody basically approaches us and says, I've got a game, and I need to sell it, and you're a distributor, so what do I need to do, right? And
we're lucky if we get that much information.
Yeah,
like really,
like we get 2 or 3 of these calls or emails a week.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to go through, right? So really the first thing, we're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to ask things like, all right, look, do you have a finished product? If the answer is like, no, I've got an idea, or I've got a prototype, or I don't know if I'm going to go Kickstarter or whatever, then at that point, really, that's not a conversation for distribution. Where distribution comes into the conversation is, I have a finished product that's in a box, in shrink wrap.
In my garage.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
We had a guy freaking out saying, I have 3,000 copies of this on my dining room table, and my wife wants it out. Can you help me? So that happens, right? But you got a finished product.
Saving marriages everywhere.
Yep. Do what we can. So yeah, if you got a finished product, great. We'll ask you things like, okay, do you know what price you want to sell it at? Do you have warehousing already? Do you have a marketing plan in place? What are you doing to support this game? What kind of demand is built in, if any, at that point, right? And we're going to work out things like payment terms and all that kind of good stuff. But all that business stuff aside, we want to take a look at your game, and we do want to play it, and we have a bunch of people both internally and externally that we use to vet out games to make sure that they're right for us. Certain distributors are stronger at different things, and when it comes to stuff like board games and collectible card games, that's really in our wheelhouse. So, if you're, I don't know, the point is we're gonna vet that game out and determine the amount of demand that we think there is for that game, because we want to be able to sell it, obviously. So if all that checks out, great. Let's talk about ship dates and put a marketing plan in place and get things moving.
Great.
Awesome. So Mike,
yeah.
popular. I have 2 questions. One's gonna be quick. Popular opinion: Peach State hobby, but Florida. Why not Orange State, or why not Georgia?
Okay, so here's
That's
a little
the
bit of a
first question.
let's have a little bit of a history lesson here. So there used to be 2 different companies. There was Peach State Sports, based out of Georgia, and then there was Premier Hobby Distribution, based out of Florida.
Oh, that's who you guys used to be.
Yeah,
I did not know. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah. So then
Nice,
we
I
merged.
learned.
Yeah, so then we merged, and now we're Peach State Hobby Distribution, which is both those companies together.
I like it. So that leads into my next question.
Yeah, no one ever gets like, why are you Peach State and you're in Florida? And like, how is Peach State involved? How is Peaches involved with gaming anyways?
People get really defensive of their fruits, so that does not surprise me one bit. Second question. Since a lot of people that aren't like in the board game industry or aren't publishers or working at retailers, a lot of like the like everyday gamer, they're not necessarily familiar with the distribution names like GTS or Peach State Hobby. So give your this is what Peach State Hobby is all about, like real quick elevator pitch or your mission statement, etc.
So, our main thing's always been, I guess for us, organized play, making sure our retailers are educated and they know that, there's a lot of us here are former retailers, myself included. So we've got a lot of, I guess, pitfall experience, what we did right, what we did wrong. So it's because everyone can argue price. Every distributor argues his prices. That's kind of a moot point in a lot of respect. Because you're going to make it up in one way or another. You're going to have better freight here, you're going to have free freight there, you're going to have special pricing on your Magic there, whatever it is. So it really comes down to the services that you offer. So our main thing's always been customer service. We put them first, we help them grow as a retailer. We curate them as opposed to like collecting and make sure that our accounts are always strong and healthy. And, if at the end of the day, if they've gone from doing $1,000 to $2,000 a week to, $5,000 a week, that's better than having 5 accounts that do $1,000 a week in our eyes. As long as we're growing them, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. We want to help our retailers.
Right. Helping your retailers helps you in the end, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, Bobby, one of the phrases that we often hear, and it's music to my ears, but I really actually don't know what it means, is sold out at distributor level. What does that mean?
Well, a bunch of hooey is what it is.
It can mean a couple of things.
Exactly. That's my
it's jargon.
It's happiness for designers.
It depends on who's saying it's sold out at the distributor level, right? That could mean, it's sold out at the distributor level and we just haven't bought more. But it could also mean that we have not been able to buy more. So, for example, the print run is gone. At the end of the day, it's you start to get into the forecasting conversation now and the pre-order conversation and why do games get shorted and how come they didn't print enough for the demand and everything and why is it sold out at the distributor level. But at the end of the day, any distributor is going to be judged on things like inventory turns and profitability and everything. So, we distributors, right? We have to keep our inventory tight. We have to buy wisely. We want to have it on hand so that even after the initial wave, somebody wants it. We have that available. And GTS specifically, we've got 10 different warehouses to worry about as well. So. It's tough because it's forecasting in this industry is not a science. It's more of a scientific nightmare.
It's like voodoo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Voodoo's right. That's my job. I'm a buyer, so it's
I would be interested in seeing the percentages of forecasting being correct or not. Wonder like.
Yeah, you only want those stats when you're on a hot streak. I feel.
Yeah. So,
It's
Mike,
like
tell us
calculating
about
when you
it.
go to Vegas.
Tell us about it from your perspective as the buyer.
The same question?
Yeah.
Well, the original question was, what is out of the distribution level? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but tell us from your perspective as a buyer.
Bobby nailed it. It's kind of a scientific nightmare, like really, because you try to get pre-orders from retailers, and pulling teeth's a bit of an understatement. No one really wants to commit to, even 6 copies of a board game sometimes in a week for a retailer. That can be like right now this week. It's Magic pre-release week, and if you're trying to get these guys to commit to, 6 copies of this, 6 copies of that, 12 copies of this. Quickly, you're adding up to $1,000, $2,000 on pre-order that they need to keep their cash very liquid. So it's hard to get a solid pre-order number. So you kind of go with your gut and a lot of these things based on previous sales. On if it's an expansion, you base it on previous parts of the game or similar types of games. So if let's just say another game comes out that's like Dungeon Roll, for example, it's very similar in a lot of ways. You're going to go back and you're going to look at your sales when that first came out. You're going to get an idea there, see how much your company's grown since then, and you increase it by that. So there's no perfect way to it. There really isn't. It does come down to a lot of really good guessing to similar products, and if something is a little special, you just get that gut feeling once in a while, and you're like, that's really gonna take off. Like Above and Below, when that first came out in November, I think I was probably one of the few people when I came back from Gen Con, like, this game is going to be hot, and it came out in November last year, and sure enough, it was gone like that. And I think a lot of people were caught off guard by the popularity of it. So I know I didn't order enough, and I tried to get as many pre-orders as I could, but you couldn't drive it home hard enough. And you can take a leap of faith on product, but you still have to go by what you really can kind of get a good concrete number on. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, man, that's got to be hard to do. So Chris Schreiber in the audience has a question. I'm going to ask it to you, Bobby. I'm going to expand on it a little bit. So his base question is, how much do retailers know about the games that they're ordering? And I'm going to kind of add something to that, is what do you as a distributor do to help educate your retailers about the games? Because I know I help my FLGS with board game procurement because they're really great with like Magic and wargaming and LCGs and that kind of stuff, but they're not as solid on board games. So I know I have to teach them a lot. So what do you do to kind of educate retailers about specifically board games?
So it's actually my job, right? So that's where marketing comes in. We're a little unique in the fact that sure, we sell to retailers, so we market to retailers, and we're trying to sell any given game to that retailer from somewhat of a business perspective. We want them to know things about the game so that they can think in their mind, okay, how many people do I have coming into my store that would be a good fit for? Or how many do I think I can move in a month at that price? Or how much shelf space does it take up? But the other thing we do that helps the retailer out is we market to the consumers as well, which is not typically something that distributors are known for doing. And we do that to actually help build that demand in the retailer's store, so that when a sales rep calls and says, okay, it's time to pre-order game X, how many do you need? If we've done our job marketing to consumers and educating the consumers, he should have demand already built in, going, yeah, I've had 10 people ask me about that this week. It helps that guy better forecast his business and manage his cash flow so he's healthier overall. So, we do what a lot of you guys in the industry do, which is help the players get excited and informed about a game and help them determine, hey, is this a good game for me and my group? At the same time, while we're also educating the retailer on that game from more of a business perspective.
All right. Mike, tell us about, for a smaller publisher, Serge Piero, who's one of the viewers right now, is asking, what is the minimum number of games that a distributor will take on? And if they can package stuff together, does that make a difference? If they have many titles, will you take a few, many titles but a smaller number of things? Or is there a magic number that they have to hit?
Is there a magic number? No. Honestly, I've brought in. It varies. It depends on the title. Depends on how strong we think it is. If we want to make a stance on it, it could go from just between all the warehouses. I could bring in like 120, or I could bring in 3,000 or something.
Right.
It really depends on the title. But to hit the minimum, it winds up being about 120 or so per single game if it's just one game.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a publisher who's got multiple titles, I'll probably bring in 30 or 40% less on the average title in their line. But the hotter ones, like recently we brought on Renegade Game Studios, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their titles like Fuse and Lanterns and Kitty Paw, some of their more popular titles that are really hot right now, we brought in heavier volumes of those. Kitty Paw we brought in more because it's also their newest release.
Right.
And the other titles I brought in minimal stock levels on the other items that have been around for a while that aren't selling as hot. It depends on the title. It varies, but there is no magic number. There is no distributors buy a minimum 120 units or something like that. It really depends, again, on the title that you have and how strongly we feel about it and how well it lines up with our customer base. Because all of us have our own different kinds of customer base. We have game titles that just don't really sell that well for us, but I know at different distributors they're selling them like crazy, and vice versa. It just we all have different customers that buy from us on a very regular basis, and it varies. You really have to know your customer base.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Going with another viewer question, I'm going to go with Bobby. And I kind of overheard a few of these conversations happening when I was at New York Toy Fair, but I'm curious about the relationships between GTS or distributors in general, maybe even if you want to talk about with companies like Impressions and PSI, and how does that work? If you're willing to kind of maybe even talk in vague terms. We have that question from Richard Miles.
Yeah, we do have relationships with both Impressions and PSI, and they're similar, but they're a little bit different. So let's talk about Impressions. Impressions presents themselves as a sales and marketing company. So if you are a small or startup publisher and you're having trouble breaking into one of the big 5 distributors because you're unknown or whatnot, and you don't have the resources or the contacts or whatever to really branch out in the industry, Impressions is a great way to go because we already have an existing relationship. So if Impressions picks up your product, Impressions solicits that product to us, and they go, hey, here's a bunch of new products this week or this month or whatever. And again, going back to what Mike said, we kind of assess those to determine how much of that we bring in. But because we have that open door, that working relationship with Impressions, that is an easier path for some smaller or first-time publishers to get to. PSI is similar. They're a little bit different, though, in terms of if your product is right for things like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target. PSI has those relationships. If that's the route you want to go through PSI. And, of course, they also sell to all the major distributors so that you can reach the core hobby as well.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No, thank you. That's wonderful.
Can I add to that real quick? Actually,
obviously, yeah. Please jump in, Mike.
Yeah.
So I find, and I say this, Aldo, he's the guy that runs Impressions, is as a buyer, one of my greatest allies. Like, really, there's a lot of titles that we wouldn't be able to carry if we couldn't use his service. So, for example, Daryl, let's pick on you in one of your games, right? Wall City.
You can pick away all you want. Use me.
So let's say Walled City, right? I needed to buy some Walled City, but let's say previously I could only buy it by like minimum case quantities, right? So I had to buy it at 6 at a time. And let's just say it wasn't selling really well. I'm like, well, I don't want to not stock it. Well, Impressions, I can buy just 1 or 2 or 3. I don't have to buy 6. So that's going to let me throw on 1 or 2 copies every single week onto my new orders coming in, and it makes me be able to keep your product on my shelf at a manageable level that doesn't really impact me so negatively at the bottom dollar-wise, and I can keep it on my shelf, which keeps it in stock, keeps it in front of the retailers, keeps it on the retailer shelves, it keeps your product alive. So Aldo at Impressions and the guys at PSI, that's what I find to be the most invaluable part about it, is I can keep all these little guys who I normally wouldn't have nearly enough time in the world to contact and just kind of pick what I know will do well and keep it on my shelf and keep it alive. Because if I had to go through you guys directly, there's no way. There's just absolutely no way we could do it. There's not enough time, and there's not enough time. There's not enough staff that we could actually afford to do it, because it just would take time management would be so horrible on it. So.
Very interesting.
I love those. I love those guys. I work with them very, very closely on a daily basis. So they're invaluable to me, And if I ever have a new guy that contacts us, I usually always send them to, depending on their size and how strong the title is, I usually go to Impressions first. Says, hey, go check out Impressions. Keith Mateka, a guy that designed Bullfrogs from Thunderworks, who got picked up from Renegade now.
Yeah.
Originally did it himself, and I was trying to bring him on. I'm like, look, Keith, I'm not going to be able to bring on the volume that you need, really. But here, let's go talk to Aldo, and Aldo brought it on. Aldo got him into all the other distributors. So, and now he's recognized. He was now recognized and picked up by Renegade, and they're coming out with that like next week or the week after or something. So, yeah. So, I love Impressions. Any of the new guys out there, any new publishers, any new designers, right now he's not taking on a whole lot of clients, but that's probably going to change. So keep Impressions in your radar to try to bring your games onto. He definitely will provide a good service to get your product into distributors.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's really good, like behind the scenes info that I think that most people like don't hear about or talk about PSI or Impressions. A lot of podcast shows like this, we don't really talk about that. We actually usually don't even get to the distributor level. So I'm glad you guys are here. So I've gotten kind of a retailer look at Kickstarter and their opinion, but I'm interested to hear what Mike, what maybe you think about Kickstarter from a distributor standpoint. Is it good, bad, neutral, both?
So I think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I owned I had my retail store when Kickstarter was coming about, and that's when it was like it was at that height of, oh no, pitchforks and torches to take down the Kickstarter giant because they're going to destroy the retail business. And so I mean, I've been on the business side of it since the beginning, and I'm optimistic to it now. I think it's good. I don't think it's bad. At this point, I think it's a really good marketing tool. At the very least, it's a good marketing tool. It's a good barometer to what kind of volume I'm going to look for in a product. So if someone has a Kickstarter comes to me and says, we had a Kickstarter, blah, 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 I'll go look at it. I'll see how many backers they had. I'll go look and see what other Kickstarters were going on at the time, because that may have affected how good they did or how good they performed or didn't perform. There's all kinds of little factors. But I think it's good. I think it's a good data tool for my purposes. As long as they're not, it's not like it's not like a $50 retail game or something, and they're giving it away for a pledge level of $5, and they get like 12,000 backers, because then you've just saturated your market and you've destroyed any kind of future sales you're really going to have for it. So you got to go into it with some kind of mindset that, and hold some stuff back that you're going to give to you're going to be able to offer to the retailers a reason to bring it in. So their customers have a reason to come and buy it from them. So I don't think it's bad. I think it's good, and I think it's a good marketing tool at the very least.
That's a really astute answer, because I mean there are a lot of ways to use barometers like Kickstarter for projecting, right? I mean, we're always asked when you want to get into a bookstore, they say, well, how is it sold in other bookstores? That's the question, right? It's like, so how are your sales in bookstores if you want to get into Barnes & Nobles? And like, well, we're not in any bookstores. How would we know that?
We need the first one so that we can get into all the others.
Right. So it's like, I wouldn't need ID if I had ID.
It's a multipass.
Yeah, multipass. and so
multipass.
Multipass.
So Kickstarter becomes that kind of barometer, multipass, for you guys in a way that, hey, we can read where the trend is going a little bit and forecast how it might sell to the general public who doesn't know Kickstarter or who might have missed on the campaign.
You have to be a little smart if you're going to use it as a barometer, because you just can't use the raw data. Like, you can't just use made X million of dollars and had X amount of backers. You've got to pay attention to what else was going on at the time. I remember, I don't want to say exactly what they were, but I remember at the time there were these 3 Kickstarters that were going. One of them was Tiny Epic Kingdoms, and then there were 2 other ones that performed really, really, really well on Kickstarter because they were all working with each other to do a lot of cross promotion. When it came to the retail side of things, it did not translate at all, and I saw it coming, and I knew it wasn't going to. And I tried explaining to them, and they couldn't understand it because we did so great on Kickstarter. Like, yeah, but you gave away everything you had. You gave away your entire value for the retail side of it. There's nothing really left for me to reap from this. oh, well, whatever. So they got really mad because I wasn't going to buy like 2,000 units. Like, sorry, there's nothing left to sell. And it proved to be true. So you can use it as a barometer, but you have to be smart about it and pay attention to not just it, but what else is going on at the time.
Excellent. Good points. Bobby, the next question is to you. You might have to unmute yourself. Perfect. So more questions are coming. DR Board Games asks, how do distributors cope with the massive numbers of games released these days? Is it much different than it has been a few years ago? What are your thoughts, Bobby?
It's very different. I will use last year's fourth quarter as an example.
What do you mean, Bobby? Fourth quarter was fine.
We had a historic fourth quarter. I think, speaking for the entire industry, there were more games released in fourth quarter than I think anyone can ever remember. It was so crowded. It was such an overcrowded board game market that games that you thought were going to be just a home run out of the gate, like Imperial Assault, had trouble getting traction because there was just so much going on. And something Stephanie said earlier about educating retailers on board games. If you know Magic, you know Pokemon, they keep coming out with releases, right? But the game is still the same. But every board game is different. There's a huge learning curve, and everybody has a limited resource on time and being able to sort through the noise and say, well, what's good, what's not good, what do I need to pay attention to? So last fourth quarter was just, we were overrun with the amount of games we had to buy, market, sell. And again, you look at stuff like Imperial Assault, it should have been great. And it was great, but it still had trouble getting traction, getting its own attention through the noise. And at the end of the day, retailers only have so much cash. They kind of have to buy as much as they can, but if there's that many games coming out, maybe you can't buy 5 or 6 deep of a title. Maybe you can only go 1 or 2 so you can get a wider breadth of games in your store. Same with the consumers. There's only so much cash to go around. How do we cope with it? We cope with it. GTS has kept up with the growth pretty well, and but at the end of the day, you've got to prioritize things. You have to. There's only so much marketing bandwidth. We only have 6 people on our marketing team. We only have so much time in the day, right? So we have to kind of prioritize what is going to what's going to be best for our business, as well as what's going to keep our retailers healthy and give them sustainable growth, because we take a lot of responsibility for the retailers' health as well.
For sure, absolutely. Well, I kind of want to ask a similar question. Another viewer asked that I want to bounce by. I want to bounce by Mike, and that is from Chris Schreiber, and he's asking, especially because of retailers having limited space, how do you prioritize recommending volume for like evergreens versus like the new hotness, or games that you think would suit their clients? What's that balancing act? How do you go about recommending volume?
Yeah, that's a big one. So the evergreens, right? Those don't move as a high enough volume as you think they do at this point per retail location. They move at a higher volume at 3 or 4 at a time at 100 retailers, as opposed to the new hotness, which does 24 to 30 copies at, just an example, 6 retailers, for example.
Sure.
I'm moving the same volume of, we'll say, Dominion, for example, right, as I do the hot title, but it's not a lot of copies to a single retailer. The evergreens are usually 2-3 copies on a shelf on average for most of the stores. Maybe it's a case, which is 6. So that's not that's technically like one spot, one shelf space in a retail store, because it's 1 copy and then 6 behind it. So that's not the evergreen. Addressing the evergreen stuff isn't really that difficult. So how do you suggest volume to a retailer for the new hot items? That is case by case, and our account managers are very close with our retailers, and they know what has sold really well with them previously. Whether or not the retailers kept track of that or not, we have. So we're pretty good about saying, hey, this type of game these pirate themes do really well for you. So when Dead Man's Hen came out, from Minion Games recently, or not recently, but you know what I mean, more recently ago. We said, hey, you guys are really strong with pirate games. Go ahead and do this. Go ahead and bring bring an extra case of this in. And the same thing happens when Rum and Bones came out. Hey, bring in an extra case of this because you always did really strong with pirate-themed games, for example. So it is case-by-case basis, and it really depends on what our account managers know the retailers have done in the past. But there's not a whole lot of science and exactness to this. It's very much inventory for us and retailers is and kind of has to be very liquid. In
Sure.
its expansion and contraction, because it is. As Bobby spoke of Q4 last year, and on the week of Black Friday, we had 68 brand new titles.
Wow.
That's not a huge number in like the grand scheme of numbers, but
It's a lot.
that's a lot of crap to come out on 5 days.
Yeah.
That is a lot to deal with.
And that was 30 titles or something from PSI. That was it just was a whole mess of stuff.
Wow.
And how do you even begin to properly market and educate your retailers at that point? It's a matter of like, yeah, we got stuff, buy it. Because
Here's the list. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Buy them all.
Correct.
Yeah.
When
One
you
of
get to
each.
that kind of
One
point,
of
it
each.
is. It's just an Excel list. Here's an Excel list. Check off what you need. These are the things I think you'll do well in. You don't have enough time to go over each sell sheet with each retailer and each title and be like, here's what all 5 of these different, Neuroshima Hex expansions do. You don't have time for that. You just Neuroshima Blue, Neuroshima Purple, Neuroshima Orange. Give me how many you want now. So there's no science, unfortunately, to suggesting to retailers on how to do it. It's a lot of backtracking, looking at their sales history, and seeing how they've performed.
There's an art there. There's an art form.
So
Correct.
with all
It's
of
a
that,
relationship,
Yeah. With all that craziness in mind, Bobby, I'm going to ask you. I think this might be one of our final questions, but so the board game industry is changing, obviously, and you are like heavily involved in that. What do you see for 2016 that's different? Is there anything just totally different than we've ever seen before? Is there like game-changing distribution stuff that's going on? Are we like blurring the lines? Are distribution channels going to be more of a liaison between publishers and retailers, or like what's that going to look like in 2016 and beyond?
The big change that's going to impact everybody in the industry is what we opened the show with, which is the way Asmodee North America is now handling their products and their business, and how that affects distributors, retailers, and consumers. And it's not just that, right? It's now we're starting to see a ripple effect from that. We're seeing other publishers get wise to this and start to kind of copy that approach, saying, hey, now we can do this too. We can protect our product. We can protect retailers' investment of our product.
Yep.
So that ripple effect begins to go out, and I think more and more of the publishing side is going to start to copy that approach, which is going to give the industry a lot more stability. I hate to say this, but it's a reality, right? When Asmodee basically declared we're going with these 5 distributors, you had other publishers start to do the same thing. So you've got some, I guess I'll say, smaller distributors that didn't make the cut. They're going to have less and less product to sell, right? And the whole online landscape is going to change. So if you're somebody like Cool Stuff or Miniature Market, again, your biggest competition was all the third-party guys on Amazon, which happen to be a lot of brick-and-mortar guys, actually, ironically enough. So that gets cleared up. So at the end of the day, the value of the product, again, is preserved. Everybody can be more profitable. But somebody out there, some player out there is going to point out, well, that means when I buy a board game, I can't get it for 40% off like I'm used to now. I'm paying more.
I'm going to have to pay MSRP.
I'm going to have to pay the sticker on the box.
Yeah, right.
That's what's going to happen.
That's just going to make purchasing at the cons more easy to swallow because you're paying the same price anyways.
Correct.
It's a tough pill for everybody in the industry to swallow it at first, but I think as everybody gets used to it, the industry is going to get a lot more stable. I mean, everybody in this industry, we're passionate, we love our jobs, we want to be around for a long time, and that's what this does. So that big change from Asmodee is going to be the catalyst for a lot of that moving forward this year.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Building a better tomorrow today.
Right.
Right. Mike, last question for you. So, excuse me. What a lot of what we talk about on this show is designer centric, and so I wanted to ask you, from a designer's point of view, what would your advice be to that new designer or that designer who has kickstarted something in order to get into distribution? What do they need to do? What dots do they need to put over I's? What crosses do they need to put on T's in order to even get somebody like you to look at their stuff?
So at Gamma, we have this 15-minute presentation, all distributors do, to all the brand new manufacturers. And, you know, I'm pretty good about myself being very proactive in going out and finding the information on games as long as it's out there. However, I got to be triggered to do that in the first place. And so I spent that 15 minutes at Gamma. I made up this mock sell sheet. I made up a fake game called Awesome Goat 9000, and I just had all the different kinds of details you're going to want to have on a sell sheet. So you got the picture of the box, brief description, the content list, when the order due date is, when the release date is, all the pertinent information that I find valuable. So I did this sell sheet. It's just a one page sell sheet. Is what it's designed to do, and I presented that to them, and I gave them a copy of it, and I went over that. That is, for me, the single most valuable thing that a designer can do, is you give me a clean, bite-sized, digestible sell sheet. From there, I'm going to go do my own research on it as long as I get the information that I need from it. I need to know price, what type of game it is, mechanics involved, when it's coming out, and other little things in there. So that's the number one thing I think that any publishers can do, or designers or publishers, whatever they are, starting out, can do. Give me the information that I need to start the path, and I don't need my hand held. I'll go find the information myself. There's this one saying I always use. You know, I'm a salesman from a long time. You can't salesman a salesman. So if you call me up and you try to sell me your game, that's going to backfire on you. Just give me the information. I know what I need to support my customer base. So you can't sell me because you're not selling it to me. It's impossible. I know what I need to bring on. So just give me the information in a bite-sized, digestible format, a sell sheet.
And that's good advice just for anything. Like, that sell sheet will have multiple purposes and multiple uses.
It lives on.
You should have that. You should have that anyway. You know,
you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Oh no, I know. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm just saying for the benefit of those designers and publishers, a sell sheet is super important. You need to have that at conventions. You need to have that for distributors. You need to have that for other publishers. You need to have that for other designers. You need to have that for consumers. It's super important.
And that's the best thing, is when you design it design it for the beginning of the process with the intent to go all the way to the end consumer. So have the MSRP on it. Have it be simple and digestible for the end consumer so it can advertise to us. Mm-hmm. And then, as important as it is, I think a lot of people don't realize, we also, and we don't have to advertise to our retailers as well, we also have to do a lot of advertising internally. I'm going to rip my microphone off. Just advertise internally to our sales staff. Yeah, ready to go, man. And because we got locations all across the country, so we got to be able to remotely educate our sales staff on what the product is. So the sell sheet's got to be digestible for the distributor, internal for the distributor, to the retailer, to the end consumer, and let's dream big to the big box stores as well, right?
Right.
If you do it right from the beginning, where it's digestible through all of those formats, which it's very simple. You do it right from the get-go, and that one tool will live on for the longevity of that product.
Great advice. And now I want to play Awesome Goat 9000. That sounds
Austin
great.
Code 8000 was pretty cool, actually. I mocked it up, and I was like, it was like my office at like 9:30 the Friday before we had to leave for Gamma. I'm like, I got one final thing to do, bug-eyed, red-eyed, and I made up a fake little brief description. I'm like, I need to play this game now.
Yeah, exactly.
You heard it there, designers. Make that game. All right, I just
Yeah.
want to I want to say thanks both to Mike and Bobby for taking the time, chatting with us, sharing your wisdom and experience. Invaluable. Really appreciate it. Answered a lot of questions I have, I'm sure. Many. Thanks for fielding questions from our audience. I want to give a couple plugs. One, I want to mention if you check out iTunes, you will see now we have all 77 past episodes up there. Thanks to David Tomei. So if you want to binge listen to past episodes, listen to this. Hopefully you're listening to this right now. And then you can go listen to other episodes. The other thing I want to give a shout out is we're doing our last episode before taking a break over the summer and kind of being more sporadic. But next week with Gord Hamilton, Dr. Gord Hamilton, who has his Santorini on Kickstarter right now, and it's going gangbusters. My personal favorite two-player game. And we
That
also
looks
have...
really sweet.
It's beautiful. It's elegant and it's beautiful. And then talking about beautiful, Rob Lundy, one of my favorite artists, and happens to be the artist for Fantasy Baseball, so I'm biased. But he'll be on the show next week as well, so we'll be chatting to them about elegance and beauty and making great games. Till then, I just want to encourage you, keep making great games out there. We look forward to playing your games soon. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.